Hey, welcome to the Nest, a disc golf podcast where we talk about relevant topics in the disc golf world. I'm your host, Mike, with my co-host, Dan. Dan, how's it going over there?
It's awesome living in the nice Minnesota weather. It's October, but it's still fairly nice out. But
I saw the stocking hat, and it's getting that time of year around here where less and less people are willing to go out and play. So pretty soon it'll be. But those Minnesotans over there,
yeah,
they're a different
I mean,
breed.
they're different. They 30 degrees or negative 30 degrees. They're out there, but don't worry. The course is offering free hand warmers that day, so you best be out there. You couldn't miss a deal like that.
There's like I've seen like league stuff in Minnesota where it just snowed like 8 inches. It's -20, and they get like 40 people out there.
Sometimes even like more than 40. And they have someone at the butt crack of dawn scooping tee pads.
I love
Like
disc
before the sun
golf.
rises, they're
Yeah,
like, got the tee pads scoop for you guys. Come out and play. It's negative 30. But we got hand warmers, free hand warmers when it's negative 30.
I love disc golf, but I don't love it that much. I'll stay inside and watch coverage or something instead. So, speaking of coverage or lack thereof, we are officially into what you call the off season for elite events. We won't have anything until next year, February probably. So, not a lot to talk about, but still got some topics. Particularly some free agency stuff, which we hope we talk about a lot over the off season. Had a couple notable signings. One, Drew Gibson. Um, the details a little bit uncertain. We're getting to know a little bit more as we go, but essentially it came out just as a multi-million-dollar lifetime contract with Infinite Discs. So, Dan, I know Dan was kind of looking more into it, and you got a little bit more detail as time went on. What did you find out about it, Dan?
Yeah, so I listened to a few different podcasts and interviews from Drew himself and also from Steven Scanzarelli is I think how you say his name. He's kind of the owner of the disc golf DGPM group, which is Drew's manager. But from what I understand, essentially Drew's got a 1-year contract with Infinite as a player, where basically he's going to follow the same structure of what he's been doing. Um, so mixed bag, obviously, during that time, and just the same structure it has been in the past for any player that's sponsored by Infinite Discs. And then he has a lifetime deal with Infinite, which is like a manufacturer deal with Gibson Industries, which is his company. So essentially, Infinite Discs, or what I'm guessing is Innova, is going to be the ones manufacturing his line of discs, which are owned by him. So basically everything is under Gibson Industries. So he chooses what cut of the profit goes where, how much he makes. Um, but he will be doing that for a lifetime um, with Infinite Discs. But after that 1-year contract is up, he can go anywhere. He can sign with anybody. If he wanted to go sign with Innova, he could do that. He would just be competing against his own line of discs, which is a little interesting. I'm not sure if we'll see that route, but I guess it is an option. Um, but yeah, in terms of the multi-million dollar contract, it's a little weird because right now there's no value to it. We don't know. Drew's words and with proper evaluations, I would assume DGPM Group is a pretty legit company, a legit group with smart people, and I'm sure they have people crunching the numbers. He said within 5 years, he believes, and some statistics show, some of the tests, whatever they've done, have said that after 5 years of Gibson Industries having their line of discs, he expects to be making over a mil a year plus every year. So that's far above multi-million, obviously, but it's just hard to
Right.
announce something like that when you don't know. Like you don't want to say, well, I don't know what this means. We'll find out in 10 years. Like you can't announce that.
I
So
mean,
it's a little bit of a
yeah.
marketing tactic.
A social media
But
post can only be so long. Like you can't really explain the details you just explained, so it makes sense. And if all parties are pretty much in consensus that it is going to be multi-million over this life, I mean, it seems like a pretty safe bet. a lifetime's a long time. So it might be multi-million within a couple years. It might take longer, I guess. But what is your opinion on kind of this different? Um, Drew's kind of made it clear he's willing to do things a little bit unorthodox. He chose not to have a main manufacturer like a year or two ago. Wanted to do open bag. Seems like he's pretty happy with it. And he's made it clear that he doesn't really want to give a company the right to all of his discs, basically, or he have to throw all of one company's discs. So at first, I think people kind of thought it was strange. I think a lot of people still are kind of thinking it's strange. But what do you think about this different route? Obviously he has Gibson, and then he has the EV7.
Right. He's still
He's sponsored by them still, and as far as I know,
right.
that's continuing. And then I don't know if I I don't know if Discraft was giving him anything to be promoting buzzes. It's kind of unclear.
I couldn't imagine they would be.
Yeah,
But
it's hard to say. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about this like kind of unorthodox method of getting paid?
yeah, I think it's interesting, and especially from where it started, because truthfully, for anyone who's been in disc golf for a while, Drew kind of had a funky name to him, where he was almost kind of looked at as the villain. I mean, he's got
Yeah.
the arm sleeves. He looks the part in a way. And I think
He eh,
that's part of his brand
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But before
He cycled through companies too quite a bit prior
Right,
to this.
right, right. And I think before um, brands were a big part of players, it was kind of hard to know who players really were. And Drew Gibson was one of those guys that kind of got a villain name attached to him. So it was kind of unclear whether it was his actual decision to go open bag, or it was like manufacturers weren't really willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
And he even said in a podcast that he begged Infinite Disc to sign him. Like Infinite weren't super excited, and he had to beg for whatever contract he got. I'm sure he wanted more money than they were willing at first, which is probably the begging part. But I think what he's done with his brand and his personality is phenomenal. I mean, I love Drew. I think he's awesome to watch. He's got an awesome vibe brand to him that he's built. And I'm not sure what this means for disc golf or for him. I'd love to see it be successful just because I feel like he's earned that, and especially kind of paving the way and repping the name of a villain for a few years. I think it's super interesting. I'd love to see it pan out for him. It is a little different than the one manufacturer sponsorship, which I kind of enjoy. But then again, if you can make quadruple 5 times what you could with one manufacturer, I mean, more power to you.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah, go ahead.
he's going to create his own disc, I guess. So, he can just make a Buzz clone with his name on it. It could be the Drew Gibson mid-range.
Yep.
Like, it can be whatever. And truth be told, it can literally be the same thing as a Buzz.
Yep.
So, I think it's it's ballsy, but I think it might pay off, and we might get some cool new discs out of it. So,
Yeah. I think I think it takes a special um person or like personality for something like this to work. I don't think even if you think of some top players, this just wouldn't really make sense for some of them to be branching off and really just be heavily relying on your brand basically. We know we don't have to name names, but just disc golf in general, people aren't great at branding themselves yet. Um, Very few, even top level disc golfers, really promote themselves on social media aside from, hey, here's the tournament I played in. This is how I did. Thanks, sponsors. And then, like, some graphic if they win something. Like, that's the extent. And they're missing out on a lot. I mean, so many people want to know, like, the inside of the life of a touring disc golfer. And if they just shared some of that, some of these top mid-tier level players could be getting such a strong brand built behind them, and a lot of people are missing out on that, and Drew's doing a good job with his brand. And I just think that I mean, there's a lot of manufacturers other than the ones that we hear about, the top ones. So we'll just have to wait and see how well it goes for Drew, just basically off of his own name. and just lots of things. I mean, is he going to sponsor players like with this Gibson Industries?
That's
Like,
interesting.
who knows? Like,
Is he gonna have enough discs to basically, if he wanted to sponsor a player, could he sponsor a player with a full line? Like
right.
how many discs are coming? We don't know.
Yeah, and it'd just be kind of interesting to take a guy who says he's super kind of against the idea of just signing with one company and then having him sign players to his company. Like it's going to be interesting. I think it's a good fit. I think he's a good person to try it.
Right.
If it's going to work for anyone, I think it probably would work for him. So yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see. It sounds like there's going to be some. He's going to have some more signings, um, in the off season with some other companies too. So he's not done by the sounds of it. So we'll have to wait and see.
Mhm.
Um, we have another contract, but before we do that, I just want to ask you what like with the disc golf with Scans doing the management company. Do you think that disc golf's ready for something like this? Do you think that it's gonna help? Like, what do you think about the company and like um that system? I guess.
Right. Me and Mike know Scans a little bit, but I think, especially with him leading the way, if you go watch the Nick and Matt show, he was on there. He's just very knowledgeable about the sport, about business. He has avenues that most people don't, and he can get players on the right paths and the right avenues to get these sponsorships and stuff like that. So it's interesting now because they have like 4 or 5 players, which some of them you may have heard of, some of you may have not. Matty O, Drew are probably the biggest two. Connor O'Reilly, but
Eric
those are
Oakley.
players. Eric Oakley as well, yeah. So those are guys that might be a little bit lackluster in terms of the money category in these contracts. So it'll be interesting to see if they get promoted. I know Matty O has had some struggles with just having enough money to stay a week for an event so he can get practice rounds in. I know USDGC and the Pro Tour finale, he basically said, I'm coming the day before because I don't have enough funds to sit there and um, have a B&B for the week and
Yeah.
practice. Like I'll just show up the day before practice. Um, so a player like that, it'll be super interesting to see if, DGPM can make a way for him to get a proper contract that I think Matty O deserves. I think he's a heck of a personality, great player. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think this could make waves. I think this is going to push player contracts a lot if they do a good job, which I think they're going to. I mean,
Right.
imagine what some players are going to think. And no disrespect to Eric Oakley, but obviously not someone you think of as like top elite player, top 20, top 10, whatever number you want to give it. If all of a sudden this offseason he bangs out like 3 contracts with companies and maybe re-signs with, Dynamic for 100,000 in the year, and you got however many players above him, like rating wise and performance wise, and they're thinking, well, hold on, if he can get this, like of course I can. And if they're willing to share those numbers, it's just gonna like propel everybody, and it's gonna make these companies have to pay what they
Hmm.
probably already should have been doing. But
They should have been doing that, yeah.
with defense to them, I mean, no one's really made them. So um, yeah,
You're gonna be paying the minimum as long as possible.
yeah, of course. So I think it's good. I don't know if disc golf is ready for just a standalone agent for signings, which is why I think it's super awesome to see what else they're doing. I mean, they added like wealth management, like an advisor that can help them with their
Financial
finances,
advisor. Yep.
lifestyle stuff, and like exercise wellness. I saw they just signed somebody, and like a bunch. It's gonna be like, and Scan said on that Nick and Matt show, it's basically white glove, like it's full service. Like if you come to them, or if Eric Oka goes, man, I just need someone to do my Instagram for me. They claim they're going to do that at a cost, of course. But so I think that that's because it's kind of like that almost ready for the agent thing to extend and do a lot of services. I think it's going to be great. Um, and I hope I see a bunch of new. I hope we see a bunch of new ones come out of the woodwork because of it. Competition's always good, so I think it's going to help the game for sure. So the other signing we had was Kristen Tatar signing a 4-year, $500,000 contract. Um, I there was some talk that people were like questioning if that was guaranteed or not, or if that was like what it could be worth. the way I believe on her Instagram, she didn't use the word guaranteed. She said worth 100 or 500,000. I did see on a couple of different articles it did say guaranteed. So, I mean, that's a big difference, and that's something Dan and I have talked about to where we have to be careful. First of all, I hope it's guaranteed because she deserves that. Like that, you know. But if it is guaranteed, that's an amazing step for the women. Obviously, she's a top three player, whatever, you know, argue what you want. But that means, I mean, I'm assuming Paige is already getting that as far as like royalties go, but like I don't know what she's getting for contract wise. Paige immediately, and even if Paige is getting that, Paige goes, look at my resume compared to hers. Like I should be getting paid accordingly. You know, all these other people that are up in that area, they're going to be expecting something similar. And it's just going to come down to what companies are willing to do that. And I think there's going to be a shift um, as far as sponsored players soon because once these companies are kind of forced to pay this market rate, it's going to be interesting to see which ones can and which ones are willing to. And I think it could shake up a lot of players. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you like a company. If they're not willing to pay, you're going to go somewhere that does, right? So it's
Yeah,
going to be,
we've seen that.
yeah, it's already happened. And I think it's going to happen more and more with these contracts being more, it, you know, the fact that it's a shame that these companies are so against. Well, it makes sense why they are so against sharing contract details, but all it would take is contracts to be public for the entire game to switch on its head, and these contracts to be fair and more across the board. And hopefully, it happens soon. It's starting to happen, obviously. Yeah, I mean, congrats um, to her for getting that contract, and you know, it'll be interesting to see how it progresses even this year as far as who can, you know, it's kind of like the NFL. If someone becomes the new highest paid quarterback, all these quarterbacks who are deemed better than them, they're like, oh, well, I know how much I need to get paid in my next contract, right? With like Ricky, I believe Ricky's in a contract year this year. Um, I mean, he probably in his head is thinking I need to get at least a million a year, you know, or close to it if Paul's getting it, because I'm pretty much right
Yeah,
next to Paul. And will Innova pay that? I mean,
that's a good question.
who knows? But who
We don't know
will?
what Innova will pay.
Yeah. So I mean, if Dynamic Discs just pops their head out and goes, "Hey, Ricky, we'll pay you $1 million a year," and no one else is, I think Ricky might be going back
I
to,
don't think Ricky would think about it.
yeah. So can you imagine Ricky throwing
Once
Trilogy
again,
again,
Gary Sight, man.
throwing those
He threw
daggers?
he threw harps and better than anybody. I think that's probably true still.
That feels like such a long time ago. Oh, it's still true.
So,
It's still true.
oh, still
Who
true.
throws them better?
No, but nobody.
He could pick one up right now and be the best harp thrower in the world.
Would
But
he throw pigs better?
maybe. I don't know. Depends who you ask,
That's a
probably.
dumb question. They're the same disc.
So, and like we said, as the off season goes on, we'll definitely see some more contracts. We'll definitely talk about them as they come. Ulti World does a great job of keeping track of all the contract signings. I'm a little disappointed. Last year, I think I could be wrong, but I think at this time they already kind of had like a, hey,
Free agents
here's all the
list.
free agents that need to
Hmm.
sign. Like keep an eye on them, and they don't have that list right now. Maybe it happened later in the year last year with COVID. It's hard to remember like exact
Yeah.
timeline, but shout out to Ulti World. Take a look at that. They always have all the up to date news, and yeah, it'll be fun. Something to keep us busy in the off season for sure. So there were a couple events. Obviously not the caliber events we typically cover, but there were a few big A tiers. I know Dan has those pulled up. Dan, what happened this weekend?
So, the first one I'll start off with is the Oklahoma Open, which is an A tier in Oklahoma where you had a few names, Matt Bell, Mason Ford,
Hmm.
Emerson Keith, Coda Hatfield. So, some names you might know, some names you might not as well know. But taking it down was Jonathan Nicholson, which is a DD sponsored player, and he brought home $3,000. And I'll just do the top
Where's he
five real
Where's he
quick for
from?
you. Oh, that's a good question. he is from on his PDGA is
Yeah.
from Kansas.
Okay.
So I think where he won one of the NADT championships or maybe runner up
Oh.
to Kyle Klein. So that's kind of where he decided to go pro
Okay.
after that. But the top five here is Jonathan Nicholson, Mason Ford, John Willis second, Matt Bell, and then a tie for fifth, Bo Tillman, Connor O'Reilly, and Coda Hatfield.
Okay.
And then
What first
another
place?
one,
What first place take? Give. Okay.
$3,000.
Solid.
So a decent
Yeah. Good weekend.
decent pot. And then a slightly smaller event, the Down East Players Cup,
Mm-hmm.
which happened in Greenville, North Carolina. So maybe some of the guys from the Pro Tour Championship, including our guy Nathan Quing and Joe Freeman, decided to go play that event. So I'll do the top five. Scott Conway, Dan Hastings, Nathan Queen, and then we have quite a huge tie for third. We have Nathan Queen, Joel Freeman, Taylor Rafalowski, and Michael Johansson. And then the winner of that took home $2,000
Okay.
and
Cool.
average, 1030, 1040 golf. So, pretty solid win for him. But it's good to see these events still happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, outside of the tour, and you will see more of not the top of the line touring pros at these events, but it's cool to see some of the guys go out and compete and bring home decent size purses at these events. So
Yeah, it's really interesting the idea of there, well, and it's the same with golf. There isn't an off season if you don't want there to be one.
right,
We'll see these A tiers scattered about. I mean, it's only a few months. We have the rest. We have a few days left of October, November, December, January, and we're back on tour basically. So essentially 3 months, and it's always interesting to see which guys continue. The argument is, should you take a break? Should you not be playing at events and focusing on like form and stuff like that? Paul has a bunch of times said when he's on tour, he doesn't practice. He doesn't have time.
I'm just playing the courses.
Yeah. I mean, even practice putting, he said it's hard to get in how much he wants to. And if you think about it, if you're driving, I mean, some of these trips, you're finishing on Saturday, sometimes Sunday, which is even crazier. You're probably going to get there Monday or Tuesday. You have 2 days to practice, 1, 2, 3 courses sometimes, which is crazy, and then you're playing again, and that's the 8 months. That's nonstop. And so, if you're a full touring player, that mean the overwork is definitely a potential thing, but at the same time you gotta pay the bills too. So
Right.
as pay gets higher and gets bigger, deeper as you go down the list on events, I think you'll see less and less of these big guys playing and stuff. Um, but yeah, it's always cool to see who. I mean, Emerson Keith is just known as. I remember one year he broke the record for events in the year. Did he have
Yeah.
like 70 events or something just
Right. He
out?
played way more tournaments than there were weeks on the
Yeah, just
calendar.
I mean he'd play and he would just go and play these like 1 day C tiers on a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. Like he just play every weekend. And
There's money to be made.
yeah, I mean there has to be a balance between making money and like progressing your game because you're really not going to probably progress just playing in events to a point, especially if you're a top level player like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's just interesting to see different people's definitions of an off season. So yeah, so one thing that I did want to touch on is just kind of our take on the Pro Tour this year and what we're kind of hoping for in the future, I guess. So I think this year, people have said it. I don't want to exaggerate it or like get ahead of ourselves, but I do think that this year for disc golf was probably the biggest step forward for the pro end of it. We had the Disc Golf Pro Tour making huge strides. We had money higher than ever before. We have outside sponsors. The PDGA, the national tour, dissolved into obviously having an end of the year, but we now only have one tour, which is more professional, looks better, and it's going to make money easier to obtain for these from these sponsors. And just overall, I think just the quality of play got better. It got harder to get into these events, which I think is a great thing. And I don't have I don't really have a ton of critiques. I wish I did. I can't really think of any off the top of my head um as far as things that the Pro Tour should have done better. When they do make small mistakes, they're very quick to admit them. And I think that's a
Mhm.
huge strength. And in the disc golf world, that's very hard to come by, and everyone kind of knows what that means. But yeah, I have only good things to say about the tour this year. Dan, give me something bad. Give me something.
Well, I think, a lot of the bad stuff did come from the PDGA, and not that they were doing things so poorly, but like you've mentioned a ton of times, they've been doing things like this for years. And Disc Golf Pro Tour came and made a standard that was way higher than what the PDGA had been doing in the past. The PDGA just kept doing what they were doing
Yeah.
because why not?
Hmm.
And Disc Golf Pro Tour lapped them, and players got upset after, having this high standard, then going to an event, and there's FPO pop-up baskets.
Yeah.
But the good news is the Disc Golf Pro Tour absorbed that, and we should look for Disc Golf Pro Tour standards on every single Elite Series, NT. I think they are still going to be called NTs, but um,
Which is weird.
whatever event, right?
Yeah.
Whatever event they are, we should expect Disc Golf Pro Tour standards. The sport's growing. Um, yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of bad. You can nitpick at little things, but I don't think that's helpful. Um, I think players did a good job at, when they saw something wrong, they were vocal about it or made some kind of stance. We don't always agree with the means of their, making a stand or
Yeah.
what they're standing up against, but I think doing that and using your platform for something like that is good, especially when you feel like something is wrong.
Yep.
So, I really can't complain.
Yeah. So for me, moving forward for the Pro Tour, one thing I'm really going to be interested in is how they navigate how many events that they potentially have. There's a ton of events that could be on the tour, could shuffle around on the tour. They could do it a couple different ways. They could shuffle stuff, things that aren't quite a Pro Tour event, or a Silver Series, switch it to an Elite Series the next year. They could do that. One thing I'm really hoping for is really that exclusivity of being on the tour. I think it's ready. I think we're pretty much ready. I mean, towards the end of the year, these Elite Series events, there was like almost no one under 1,000 rated that were able to get into these before they filled up. I think that's great. But I think there needs to be something done to where players don't have to sit over their computer making sure they get registered for this stuff. They did say they're going to announce a tour card, or they did announce a tour card for next year. It was really vague. They didn't give much info. They said for the men, I don't remember how many women, it's less, but it's probably about the same proportion of touring players. So 72, they said 72 men will be eligible for a tour card. And by the sounds of it, that essentially means they get to play in any tournament they want to if they want to. They don't have to sign up on time. They don't have to. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a deadline, of course, but it won't fill. And Drew Gibson is trying to get to the TD to try to let him into the event. So, um, but what I'm hoping for moving forward, and that probably won't be this year, but maybe or next year, but years in the future, is make it special to be in these events. So obviously your top tour pros, they have their tour cards, but make that tour card something that's like this amazing feat or this thing that's like really important to where maybe Silver Series events it's a little bit easier to get into, or maybe it is like, if you have a tour card you can play in it. If you don't, here's the tiers of 1,000 plus to 980 to whatever. But make it so if you finish in the top 20 in a Silver Series, you get a 2 tournament exemption into the Pro Tour, where you get 2 events, you get a chance to play in them, and then once you are in them, if you finish in the top 40, you get to play the next one, or have it to where people can be, because the way ratings work, it takes a long time to get your rating changed with it being a year-long process. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. I personally think that we should look more towards golf in that. And what golf does right now is they take your last 20 rounds is all, and then they take your 8 best rounds, and that's what they make your handicap with. Now it's a little bit different in golf because the main reason for handicaps in golf is to make sure people don't cheat, honestly. Whereas for us, it's kind of becoming this thing of giving people the opportunity to play. So you probably won't take the top 8, but I think something that like that where you just take the last 20 rounds or last 30 rounds or something would be a much better indicator of how good someone is. Because I mean, if you take someone who wasn't touring, wasn't playing much, and then the offseason they decide they're going to make this their job and they start trying to tour the next year, I mean, they might be 30, 40 points better, but you're not going to see that change until 11 months drop off, which is just crazy. So, but anyways, I kind of went off topic there. What I'm hoping for is just the ability to work your way into these events, but make them hard to get into. I think that's going to give us more storylines. I mean, picture. It's just easier to have storylines. Like if you have the Beaver State Fling, let's say, is a silver series, and I get to play in it, and I have the tournament of my life, and I get 32nd place. Well, top 40 got an exemption into the next tournament, which happens to be the OTB Open or whatever it is. So now, Disc Golf Press can say, look at this guy. He's only 960 rated, but he had the tournament of his life, and now he's had the opportunity to play with these all 10, 20 rated plus guys. Like, it's just a good story, and I think it allows ratings to mean a little bit less, but still be important. Yeah.
And going off that, I think with the exclusivity of the sport, we'll also find, I think disc golf needs a little bit more security. There needs to be a separation between fans and players. If any of you have been to a Pro Tour event, there's nothing stopping you from just walking up to any of the pros.
Yep.
I mean, that's just not what a professional sport should look like. Which maybe this is my negative from the year.
Yeah, I was about to say you found a negative, and I agree with this.
But I think it's something that, and I think they're working on it, but there should be less than a little caution tape in a gazebo, which signifies the, player warm-up area, and I can just sit, 5 feet from there. I just don't think that's what it should look like at a professional level, and I think we're getting away from that. I know they talked about USDGC, like they had basically, Drew said this is the only event of the year Paul Macbeth can come and not have to talk to anybody if he doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to.
And you know what? And as a professional athlete, you should have that.
Yep. At everything you go to.
Every event you go to. If you for some reason, whatever the reason may be, whether it's a good reason or not, I think it's your decision to not talk to fans.
Yep.
And especially when you're trying to practice.
Yep.
So, I think we'll see more courses getting shut down properly, a little bit better security, and then at these Pro Tour events, just having better facilities for players to warm about a little bit more secluded from, fans. And I think that's with the exclusivity, like when you have 950 rated players that don't know what it means to play at a Pro Tour event, like it's kind of hard to make those things happen.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I think that the sport is behind in that sense that you are kind of forced to be a personable player, because if you aren't, you look bad and people kind of like look down on you, and that shouldn't be the case. I don't think it should be forced upon these players to not interact with the fans, but it should be like USDGC where if you want to not, you have every right to, and you easily can. I think the big transition we're going to need with that is it has to be courses that's actually possible. Public area courses that just, I mean, how do you really do that?
Get away from that.
Yeah, and we have to move away from those, even if they're great courses. Unfortunately, it's kind of the way it is. But yeah, and I mean, there's going to be a time where, the Tour Championship just ended and first place was $30,000. I don't think we're that far away from every Elite Series event being $15,000, $20,000 for first place, maybe even a little bit more. And that's the definition for disc golfers at this point in the game. That's livelihood. So like you shouldn't be expected to sign discs if you don't want to talk to fans during rounds if you don't want to. If you're playing, I mean, $20,000 can keep you on tour. If you don't, it could send you home. So like you shouldn't have to be like with these like being friendly if you don't want to. Like it just, you should have the option, and then it's your choice at that point. If you want to be known as that really personable guy who signs stuff, who talks to the middle of the rounds, then you can, but you should be able to not if you don't want to, for sure. No, that's a really good point. I think they're doing a pretty good job of like progressing that. The problem arrives when, and I'll get your take on this. How do you feel about players who aren't playing, following inside like the ropes, like closer than what fans are able to do? Like, how do you feel about Paul Ulibarri on lead card and Jeremy Colling, not his caddy, not his next to him, whatever you want to call it, just following because he's his buddy and he wants to see it? Like, what does that look like to you, and what do you think that? I mean, for me, I think it makes it harder to make it like it makes it harder to keep fans further away, because it's like it doesn't look professional. But what do you think?
Yeah, that is interesting because I've I've never thought about that, and especially when um where do you draw that line? Is, someone like asking, "Hey, Paul Macbeth, is it okay if Big Germ walks with you? Like, is it okay if you count him as your caddy or whatever? Or can any 1,000 rated player or even 980 player in the event just come walk because they're in the event?"
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make sense. So yeah, I think it is interesting. Um, when you have people like Big Germ, Yuli, like, it feels like they should just be able to walk because that's who they are. But that begs the question, like, should it really be that way? And I don't know. Because you think if Russell Wilson went to an NBA game, he doesn't just get to go sit on the bench because he's Russell Wilson. Like,
Right.
he has to, buy a ticket and sit court. I mean, it's courtside, but
Yeah.
it is tough. I don't know. It's interesting. I've personally never had a big gripe or like seen that and been like, man, I can't stand that. But as things get more legitimate and there's huge crowds, maybe Yuli and Germ don't just cut the line. And that's just we're just using those guys because
Yeah.
big
They're,
names and
I would say arguably the most known names, like other than you, of your top 3 or 4 guys,
right.
and they're
In
not
terms
a
of
top 3 or 4 guy, but they've pushed their brand and they've done the right things that everybody knows them, and you see them at an event like that and you don't think anything of it. So yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know what the right answer is, and we don't have to copy other sports exactly, of course, and it's a little bit different when it's kind of a small group of pros and the way tee times work, and it's a unique situation, but to me there's some things that could just give it a little bit better look. So yeah, I don't know. But one thing we're gonna do is I want to test Dan every once in a while on these podcasts and see how well he's keeping up with things. So we're gonna do a game here where I'm gonna give Dan 2 players, and he is going to tell me which one of them made more money this year. How confident are you feeling about this?
10 out of 10, I won't miss one.
Won't miss one. Do you have it pulled up? Is that why you're not going to miss one? All right. So, for example, for those of you who aren't sure what we're talking about, we're going to say, so I'm going to say Paul Macbeth and Drew Gibson, and he's going to tell me who made more money. Which.
Paul Macbeth. This is PDGA earnings, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so Paul Macbeth.
All right.
Because
So,
he was the leader.
we'll obviously make them a little bit harder than that. So, the first one we're going to do is Katrina Allen and Kyle Klein.
Kyle Klein.
Kyle Klein, 57,000. Christina, 51,000. So pretty close.
All
All
right.
right.
Well this year.
Yeah. All right. Next one, Nico LaCastro and Kevin Jones.
Both kind of lackluster seasons for both of them.
Nico with a win early on in the
and
season.
Nico won with Waco. Oh man, that kind of makes me want to say Nico, but I'll go with Nico.
Kevin Jones, 39,000. Nico, 29,000.
Oh.
So, and Nico played Nico played only a couple more events than him, so I thought it was a bigger discrepancy. But all right, so you're 1 for 2. Let's go, Nathan Queen.
Okay.
And Haley King.
Haley King did make the finals, so she would have made like 8,000. Oh man, I'm gonna go Haley King.
Is Nathan Queen. Yeah,
Wow.
49,000 for Nathan Queen, and 46,000 for Haley.
Really close.
Nathan played 13 more events than Haley
Yeah, see,
did.
that makes sense. I should have thought about Nathan Queen being a weekend
Yeah,
warrior.
he's a grinder for sure. All right, so let's do Garrett Gurthie, and let's do Matt Bell.
Garrett doesn't play anything other than a tour is the problem. And he didn't have a super great year.
Garrett played 30 events. Matt Bell played 28 events.
Garrett Gurthie.
Garrett Gurthie. Yep, Garrett Gurthie has
Yeah.
26,000 and Matt Bell had 21,000. We'll do a couple more. Let's do Paul Ulibarri and Andrew Presnell.
Yuli.
No, it's actually Presnell. I'm being mean. He made 26,000 and Yuli made 24,000. So $2,000 difference. All right. Well,
Fresnel's name at all.
yeah, that I was actually surprised by that one. So let's do one more. Let's do Ezra Aderhold and Ezra Aderhold and Kona Panis.
Ezra.
Kona Panis, 25,000 to 22,000. So I think Dan got one right, maybe two if you count Paul
I got
Macbeth.
wrong that I got right.
You know, they say on
man.
true and false tests, it's just as hard to get them all wrong as it is to get them all right. So
True.
Dan might actually be a genius. So Dan, did you have anything else you wanted to go over before we wrap this up? Hopefully, you get better at these trivia games as we go on, because that was pretty bad.
So that was it wasn't worse than me playing disc golf though. Well, wasn't worse than me playing disc. That's what it
wasn't worse.
It wasn't worse.
Well, we got a whole off season to get better.
Off season.
There we go.
I'm excited.
It's all about next year, right?
Exactly.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, hit that alert button. We're gonna have more content soon. Gonna do some fun stuff in the off season, hopefully. So stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for watching. See ya.
Thanks, guys.